just thank you for taking the time and meeting with Amy. You probably are. We went through a strategic planning process last year. We came out with 3 sort of new strategic pillars. One's more new, but all 3 are packaged in a new way so that we're really kind of defining our work so that we can communicate that better and plan around it better. So the multi-use protection of the lake, being community rooted and more intentional about how we engage community. And then this 3rd pillar, which is what Amy's going to talk about today, the celebration of place. And so Ken's is going to chat with you all a little bit and just share a bit more background about the celebration of place and how we scooped up Amy into the fold, got some really great insights, and then Amy will go into her presentation.
Yeah, so thanks, Riley. I mean, just brush strokes, right? Like we're co-creating what this strategic pillar will look like, and we want to do it with the communities. But essentially, we started thinking about our engagement ladder and how to get more people engaged in our work. And there's just so many people who fall in love with the lake and the stretch of the river, and once they do that, they're kind of hooked, and it's easy to bring them into our mission and our work to protect it. And so it seemed like a really great place to start and to incorporate that as part of our new strategic pillar. And so I got to know Amy probably different ways, but I do remember she takes really excellent photos of the lake, as you can see behind her. And, sometimes that's just all it takes is like, I do community outreach. I see who's taking photos of the lake and then we connect. And she also is with the Lake City Sportsman Club. She's a teacher in Lake City. She does a lot of things for the community. One of those people like you all, where she wears a lot of hats. And so I was very excited when we put together the Community Ambassador Program more formally this year. That she was enthusiastic to join, and she's just always sending me information that really pertains to kind of this pillar. And so, and she also has a background in marketing. And so when the summer came, I thought she would be a perfect fit to kind of help jumpstart this new initiative of ours and figure out kind of what it would look like and how it would work with the rest of our programming. So needless to say, she's been amazing. I don't need to go into details. I know you've all met with her. We hope that she continues to stay in touch with us and build on this program and collaborate with the rest of our volunteers and people that are really coming together to kind of be the engine of this organization. So with that, I guess, thank you, Amy, for all of your amazing work this summer. It's been just such a pleasure to work with you. And really great outputs from your interviews and implementation ideas. So like Riley said, it's a small group tonight, but we had a lot of people interested in hearing the recording. And so I'm sure that we'll share your presentation with folks and hopefully continue to get feedback and adapt as we move forward. So unless Riley has anything else, this is kind of about Amy, so I'll pass it over to you, Amy.
Yeah, and just if you have Amy presents and want to put them in the chat, feel free to do that, and we can kind of monitor and respond to those. Otherwise, there will be time for some conversation at the end too. So, okay, thanks, Amy.
All right. Thanks, Riley. Thanks, Kens. It has been a really, really great 6-7 months that I've been deeply involved with LPLA, and I want to thank both of them as well for kind of bringing me into the fold and helping me be more excited about the work that LPLA is doing. I've really enjoyed the work that I've been doing, and the point of this presentation is sort of a capstone of my work. I'm kind of transitioning back into teacher land over the next few weeks in preparation for school starting. So I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit. So this is basically to tell what I've been up to and where we see celebration of place potentially moving forward. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I've got a presentation to go along. And if you have questions throughout, like Riley said, you can certainly drop them in the chat, but if you'd like to just turn your microphone on and jump in, that's great too. Riley, can I get a thumbs up if you can see it? Muted. Okay, good. All right. So here we go. Celebration of Place has been my focus throughout this summer. And as Riley sort of alluded to, LPLA has produced these new strategic pillars, and it's foundation of work that LPLA has been doing for a number of years. It just is packaged a little bit different. And I'm focusing my work on this third one. So when I kind of set out to figure out what this was going to be about, I tried to understand how LPLA can fulfill this. How can LPLA promote Lake Pepin as a unique area with special ecological and social significance deserving of urgent protection? So there's a lot packed into that, but there's also a lot of question marks that we didn't quite know exactly what celebrate meant or what it meant to different people around the lake. And that sort of was my jumping off point for my work. There were kind of three elements of my celebration of place work. The first was research, kind of getting my feet wet, and this idea of understanding LPLA as a place-based organization. So I did some research about other organizations that work with places and promote those places as unique destinations worthy of protection, like Chesapeake Bay, Cannon River watershed, the Boundary Waters, Friends in the Mississippi, things like that. So there was research, and then I dove into the stakeholder interviews, which Katie and Beth were a part of, to try and understand how local communities around the lake celebrate the lake. I am a Lake City native. I moved away for college and job after college. I moved back to Lake City about 4 years ago, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable. I was feeling pretty comfortable with where Lake City was at, but I have a limited perspective. So it was really a great opportunity to see other perspectives through these interviews, and I'll talk more about those later. After doing research and interviews, I kind of worked this last week to sort of synthesize all of that information together to come up with some ideas for recommendations. How did we implement this celebration of place pillar? How can we support the collective celebration of Lake Pepin? And I'll have some ideas for that as well. I did create a pretty lengthy report for Riley and Ken's and the LPLA staff. It has more detail, but I'll just share sort of a brief overview of those implementations with you later on the presentation. The bulk of my work, like I said, did land in this stakeholder interview. The goal here was to explore what it meant to celebrate Lake Pepin around the lake, and knowing that each community is different and there's unique perspectives, we wanted to make sure we hit quite a few people and quite a few perspectives. So in total, I was able to conduct 14 interviews in the communities noted in the map there. Tried to get a range of voices, including those from the business community, business owners, people in nonprofit sector, government institutions, as well as those in the tourism and recreation areas as well. In the interviews, Katie and Beth, I asked a question of who else do you think I should talk to? So one of my ideas for continuing this work and celebration is to continue these interviews. So there's quite a few more that we could do. I just ran out of time this summer, but we got a really good broad stroke understanding of different perspectives around the lake so far. From those stakeholder interviews, we were able to synthesize, or I was able to kind of boil down some things that were coming up over and over again. And the first takeaway that we found is that Lake Pepin is a very special place. And that sounds really obvious, but it's something that we need to remind ourselves of over and over again. We need to remember these things that were coming up in all these interviews. And I pulled some quotes from the interviews, like water is special, it's a magical place, majestic, a place of healing, integral to our story, opportunity to experience joy, unique place, makes people happy, and it feels like coming home. I wanted to include these quotes because not only was it repetitive, but it was very telling to show that passionate relationship, that very close connection that the interviewees have with the lake. And that passion for the lake is something that is going to be valuable as well. More takeaways. The second one is that it was interesting for me as a Lake City native to realize that not everybody thinks about the lake in the same way. Different communities around the lake identify more strongly as either a lake town or a river town. And LPLA needs to recognize both and celebrate both. That not only are we a lake community, but we're part of that larger ecosystem of the Mississippi River, and that provides additional networks to us as well. The third one is that we already celebrate the lake and the river in many ways. This idea of celebrate is a broad term, and it's a fitting term because we have a diverse way. We have diverse ways of engaging with the lake, whether that be through recreation, something with the natural world, history, economies that are tied to the lake, and more. So really trying to understand celebrate and execute celebrate as a diverse, broad term, not just one or two particular ways. And the fourth and final takeaway that I have here is that there really is a desire among the people I interviewed for LPLA to be a regional coordinator. They were looking for a regional coordination effort to celebrate the lake area and advocate for protection. So the general idea was that, hey, we're in a community, we kind of do our own thing, but we don't always collaborate with our neighbors as much as we could. So looking to LPLA as being a central hub for engaging locals and visitors with the lake seemed to be an idea that the interviewees were interested in. All right, so after all this research, the interviews and the other types of research that I did, essentially dropped this celebration of place idea into three buckets, as you see on the screen. So the first is awareness. In order to celebrate the lake, we need to make sure that people know Lake Pepin is a special place. And we also need to collaborate in order to celebrate the lake well. So that means connecting the whole region, looking at us as a together thing rather than a competitive, competitive approach to and bringing people to the lake. And the third one is engagement. For LPLA to facilitate more experiences with the lake, we know that if we can get people on the water, we will hook them. And if we hook them, we're more likely to accomplish our other goals in the organization as well. In the interviews, we also kind of realized that there is a difference between targeting locals and targeting visitors and how we engage those two different audiences. We may need different tactics for those as well. So as I created an implementation plan or a series of recommendations, I separated those two categories within each of those three buckets. So I'll share that with you shortly. All right, so jumping into the first bucket, celebrating with awareness. One thing that we realized and we need to remember is that locals sometimes take Lake Pepin for granted. So any work that we do in this awareness category should move forward with the goal of reigniting their love for this place. The reminders of, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. Or, oh yeah, people don't see eagles everywhere they go in town. Or, wow, that's an incredible vista. If we're tackling the audience of visitors, sometimes we run into the issues that visitors just simply don't know that Lake Pepin is a special place. So sort of working towards the goal of putting Lake Pepin on the map as a worthwhile destination. If they're thinking, oh, I want to go someplace beautiful, we want Lake Pepin to be one of those options that pop into their head. So how do we actually do this? What are some ways that, or items that we could implement, or initiatives that we can implement in order to accomplish those goals? On the local side of things, we could tackle social media. We could simply just bring up the awareness of, look at this amazing picture. Isn't this incredible that we get to live in a place like this? So more social media interaction there. I also recommend doing I love Lake Pepin testimonials. These would be these would be short videos, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, of local influencers, local leaders, people such as yourselves, that people know in the community as someone connected to the lake. And you would share what you love about the lake. Why did you choose to live here? Why do you have a business here? Or, what do you love about the lake when visitors come to town? Something like that. So just sort of use your clout, LPLA, use our ambassadors or partners' clout in the community to bring the amazingness of Lake Pepin top of mind. The third bullet point on the left is environmental educational content. Essentially, a lot of people in the community think of the lake, but they don't think of it in all its glory. They maybe only think of it as a boating destination. They maybe only think of it as a place that there's a beach. Okay, but there's a lot more to it. So if we can get more content out about the environmental importance of the area, the bird flyways or the geology, the uniqueness of being a lake on the river, and how that's kind of a cool thing, we may help locals be reminded, we may help remind locals of how special the lake is. And then the last item on the left, there's a land acknowledgement. You may be familiar with this practice. It's becoming more popular over the last couple of years, of honoring that this place that we love is a place that has been loved and honored for thousands of years by Indigenous peoples. So just bringing recognition and awareness to that history that is painful at times, and honoring that we are loving a place that is really deeply rooted into the culture of Indigenous peoples in our community. On the visitor side of things, one thing that has been talked about for a while that I think will be amazing to have, a top priority item, is to implement or create a Lake Pepin recreation map. This would be a regional map. I know many of the communities around the lake have their own sort of points of interest map, but this would be something that would tie the entire lake together. It would be pragmatic in the fact that it would list places like boat launches, public restrooms, and charters, outfitters, guides, things like that, fishing guides. But it would also be a way to show Lake Pepin as a whole in its glory. So it could include things like vistas, it could include beaches, it could include a whole variety of things, and it'd be a great one-stop shop for visitors. In a similar fashion, some of the interviews I had recommended, or we talked about, people come to my town for X, Y, or Z, but then they don't always go to the lake. So what can we do to sort of entice them to the lake? So that's where the idea of community recreation cards come in. If people go to Pepin for the Laura Ingalls Wilder Museum, for example, there would be a community card available that says, hey, thanks for stopping in Pepin. Did you check out the lake? Here's how you can access it in our community. So more community specific lake access or lake interaction. And then targeting visitors with social media as well. We need visitors to be able to see themselves on the lake, so highlighting more activities that people could do around the lake, on the lake, related to the lake. All right, that's bucket one, awareness. We also want to celebrate the lake through collaboration. And in my interviews, I heard these two terms come up. Lake City tried to promote itself as Minnesota's South Shore, and some towns, Great River Road in Wisconsin, try to promote themselves as the West Coast of Wisconsin. I want to try and get LPLA to get the communities to think of this as our Lake Pepin. Think of this more of as a regional effort, so maybe not necessarily city specific or state specific, but both sides of the lake, all around north to south. And the interviews really stressed a strong desire for LPLA to be a leader that brings the region together. And promoting that whole region will lead to collaboration among communities and stronger networks. So for example, one thing that was coming up in my interviews, it just happened to have good timing. There was an art exhibit that was a place-based art exhibit in Red Wing, the plein air art exhibit. At the same time, Lake City Area Arts had a water exhibit. At the same time, there was an exhibit in Winona, and I thought, wow, that's a unique way to kind of tie our communities together, but they're all centering on our Lake Pepin. So creating stronger networks through collaboration is something that I'd recommend. For locals, one way that we could do this is through a Lake Pepin circle tour. This is actually one of the ideas that came up in an interview. We know that a lot of locals drive around the lake, go for a Sunday drive. And if we can create a lake-centric driving tour, maybe point out some unique points of interest, it might help show locals a little bit more about their neighboring communities, and maybe not go for the obvious spots, but some places that help highlight that Lake Pepin is really special. I'd also recommend a collaboration initiative of having LPLA engage with more civic organizations and government committees and groups through presentations. Earlier this summer, Ken's presented at a Lake City organization meeting, but there's more opportunity to get involved, and it's a great way to have a two-way communication between the communities and what they need, as well as the overarching work that LPLA is doing. I really want to see more stakeholder interviews continuing, and I think that's something I'll be able to continue in a limited capacity throughout maybe the year, or maybe continuing into next summer, just again, continuing the two-way street of information and seeing what people around the lake are interested in, and amplifying local events, just sharing what's going on in different communities that is related to the lake. So if there's a lake-related event, we can share it on our social media. I also had the idea of educating a partner network. So similar to the ambassador program with LPLA, what this would do is it would bring in business leaders, especially those in the hospitality industry, and LPLA would help organize them to become more informed about what's available around the lake. We know that these hospitality leaders, hotel owners, restaurant owners, that's where people are, that's who people are asking, like, what is there to do around here? And if we can inform them and kind of expand their understanding of what it means to enjoy the area, then they're going to be better ambassadors for the lake and for our communities as well. And that idea came out of an interview too. That would also help visitors. Something else that would help visitors on the right-hand side there are create Lake Pepin-centric itineraries. There's some websites that have been gaining in popularity as far as like regional tourism efforts around Minnesota and Wisconsin. So I think creating some itineraries there to get people to engage with different communities around the lake would be a good idea. Also engage in a social media and maybe just a broader tourism campaign with communities called Our Lake Pepin. The idea of it's us, it's not this community or that community separate, it's all of us together. Another idea that came out of interviews were interpretive signs around key locations. This would be similar to the like the geographical markers around the lake that are in a few areas. Many towns around the lake have their own little markers or signage about what that point means or history of the area, but there's not a collective Lake Pepin interpretive signage group. So that would be an idea to do something that would excuse me, pull the whole lake together. And building on the idea of, or the work of some other organizations, I would recommend that LPLA be a leader in doing a welcome to Lake Pepin visitor information, a miniature visitor guide to help visitors understand what's available and how they can engage with Lake Pepin. Speaking of engagement, we know that this is sort of the bread and butter of people getting hooked into Lake Pepin and hopefully then doing something about it and wanting to come back year after year. That power of experience is really what I learned through the interviews, that if we can get people here, we've got them. We can hook visitors to Lake Pepin through more organized experience opportunities. Different businesses and different communities sort of do their own thing, but if LPLA can add to that repertoire of experiences, that's going to help solidify people's love of the lake and really understand that magic of Lake Pepin. Ultimately, this is good because experiences lead to caring, and that leads hopefully to action or advocacy where they want to do something about issues that are affecting the lake, whether it be invasive species, whether it be sediment or anything else that comes up. And then hopefully that advocacy and action leads to preservation, which is the broader goal of LPLA. Some ideas that we have here on the local side, just general recreation events. So adding monthly or every other month types of events that would give locals the opportunity to engage with the lake in a different way. So for example, when I was growing up in Lake City, I really didn't engage with the lake very much. We didn't have a boat growing up. I still don't have a boat, but different things sort of drew me into to engage with the lake in new ways. So photography is something that I'm interested in now. Hiking is something that I'm interested in now. And I wouldn't have ever done that without kind of other people bringing me into the fold. So we could sort of be that guide for people to experience the lake in new ways. We could also engage youth through education programs with schools or with environmental learning programs in areas around the lake to create some partnerships to help young people engage more deeply with the lake as well. On the visitor side of things, we can update our website content to be more visitor focused, to try and understand what people might want to experience when they visit the lake. And we could also use social media influencers, so paid advertisers, to come spend a day, spend a weekend in the area and get to different experiences. And they share those experiences with their followers. It's actually kind of a common way for smaller towns to advertise. I've seen it quite a bit over the last couple of years. And they would sort of share that experience, and the visitors could see themselves in Lake Pepin. So perhaps it could be a destination for them later on. Some other larger things could be holding a getaway contest. So have people enter. I've seen small towns do this, and the winner would be able to have a getaway in the Lake Pepin area, and doing a Lake Pepin scavenger hunt where people would do this on their own in their cars, kind of a family-friendly activity where there would be some sort of checklist and they'd have to hit all the places, or maybe a photo scavenger hunt or something like that. So trying to hit sort of a variety of experiences across these three ideas of awareness, collaboration, and engagement, and really honoring the place that we are in and all it has to offer, and maybe expanding what people think of when they think of Lake Pepin. So Riley maybe can jump in now, but I can continue to share my screen here. Ultimately, this celebration idea fits really well into those three pillars. But I don't know, I've just sort of given a broad overview, and then we had some questions that we thought we could ask those of you who are here. Before we get into those questions, I'm wondering if anybody has any questions for me about just sort of my implementation plan. And if not, that's okay too.
Thanks, Amy. Even though I knew what you were going to present, I still to you and your enthusiasm for the work that you've done over the summer. It's so great to see. I think as we move forward, one of the things that we've chatted about is some of these ideas have continued to resurface, and it was really nice to have Amy able to capture them and validate many of them with the interviews that she did over the summer. Of course, all of these take time and capacity, and we really want to engage the community more directly and bring them into the fold. And so we have the Community Ambassador Program where I think, sorry, I got distracted, train of thought, but the Community Ambassador Program, which has been really great to have people volunteering and taking on different things where they're particularly interested. And so as we kind of move into the next phase of this conversation, we want to invite you all on the call to kind of weigh in around what is interesting to you and if there is interest in moving any of these ideas forward as kind of a coalition. So for those of you that decided to join us tonight, we're going to go through a couple questions and just see what pops up for you, what feels like really important, energizing, engaging work, and that can kind of help us prioritize as we move forward.